Welcome to Goldfish on Games. It's no secret that I'm a massive fan of Settlers 2, but one of the best parts of the game didn't arrive until the expansion pack, and that was obviously the level editor. We looked at it briefly in my review of the game, but it's time to take a much more detailed look at it. And it's easily one of the better looking editors we've covered so far. It helps that it looks like it shares its UI system with the main game. Everything looks and controls in a very similar fashion. It's all quite easy to pick up and use. There's no crazy key combos or deep manuals, it's more or less entirely mouse driven. When you start, you get to pick the size of the map as well as the biome that you're going to be working in, and then you can generate your world. And it's very quick. I'll go with the typical grassland for now, but first things first, I've got to get my UI laid out just how I like it. But normally I bring up the windows and then try and position them so they're not in the way of the center of the screen, so I can easily edit anything that I want. And with our UI roughly where I want it, it's time to start laying down the basics of this map. Can you guess what it's going to be yet? That's right, in true typical vain YouTuber personality style, I'm drawing out my initials. GFG. And while I'm not expecting this to be the most amazing map you'll ever play, it does give you a rough idea of how easy it is to draw what you want. Now you'll notice as I move around, I very quickly change the size of my brush, which is done using keyboard controls. You use the number keys. Now this is one of the few bits that's not actually on the main UI, but it does give you a nice visual representation of how big the brush is. And with the grasslands done, it's time to put some mountains down so they'll have somewhere to mine. And I'm actually going to put a long line of these along the bottom of the map, which will underline the entirety of the letters. Now it will connect all the letters together, so it might be an area where they'll end up fighting, but due to the limited space it won't be a particularly great area for combat. And with the basics done, it's time to start making these look like actual mountains, which we can do using the Shape Terrain button. As you can see, just hold down the mouse button and we can raise anything that's underneath our cursor. If we want to make it lower, we just hold down the Shift key. And if we want to do it in more detailed increments, we can just use the number buttons to change the size of our brush. It's all the same as what we use to create our basic terrain. And with the terrain in mind, it's time to start shaping that as well, so it doesn't look like just one great big long flatland. But you should bring up the buildings icon every so often to make sure that you're not destroying all their buildable area. And as this is basically a large, very weird looking island in the middle of the ocean, we probably should put a sandy beach along the edges, just to give it a bit of flair. I always wondered whether or not this was the same editor they used to make the main game with. It looks as if almost all the tools required are actually all here. The only things that seem to be missing are the systems required to do the small scriptable events, but those might have been done externally and then just imported. But either way, it's a really nicely done editor, and due to how easy it was to use and how much fun it is to mess around with, Blue Byte managed to knock out over 180 maps in total between the main game and the mission CD. I always figured it was because they enjoyed using it so much they decided to include it on the CD and spread the joy with everyone else, including me. And with the magic of editing, we've finished the coast. And with that done, it's time to start placing down a few areas where they can build buildings in these mountains, so they can continue to expand out into it so they're actually able to access all the resources we're going to put there. But before we place any real resources down, it's time to start thinking about where our players are going to start. So player 1 is going to be up here somewhere, so we can bring up the players menu, select it, and then place down the flag. And that's it. And it's time to start channeling our inner Bob Ross and start placing down some trees. Happy little tree here, a nice little tree there. Yeah, that will do. Bit of a bravery test. Remember, there's no mistakes here, just happy little accidents. Now remember, we're going to need to place down quite a few of them if our players are going to have the resources needed to really start going. Remember, we're going to have to drop down quite a few trees if we want to give the player enough resources to properly get going, and we're going to have to place them across the entirety of the map. And with us coming into the middle, it's time to start thinking where player 2 is going to start. And again, probably near the top of this letter, but not blocked in, so around about here should be fine. And let's start giving them a whole bunch of trees as well. Now it's not just trees that we're going to be placing down, but that's what we're looking at the moment. And we really should also make this terrain a little bit more detailed. It's still quite flat around here. And remember to keep making sure that you're not destroying all their ability to place buildings. And it seems I'm also going to have to go around the first letter as well, as I completely forgot to make that terrain more detailed as well. So let's quickly do that while we're here, and make sure the whole map is more or less in a decent state. And with that done, it's time to place the final player. So let's jump up to the last G, and then place the flag round about here. So let's start placing some trees as well for them, so they've got something to cut down. As you need to make sure your maps don't favour any one player in particular. And with the trees down, it's now time to start placing some rocks, as these are very important to get your settlement up and running. I'll tend to drop a bunch near the start and then randomly through the map, though I do like the idea of having big clumps of them every so often, so there's something big for your settlers to really get into. And particularly it's great to have large clumps in areas where there's going to be a choke point between various players. This is something that the Blue Bite team tends to do quite a bit. And with the second most important resource just about placed, it's time to start thinking of what we can do to make this map feel a little more alive. And we can use these extra items, such as the dead trees and these shrubs, to make the map look a little bit more visually interesting. Now there's a whole bunch of other items that we could put down, but I don't feel they fit the map that I'm currently trying to work on, and I don't want to take up too much usable land from the players. And with the map pretty much prettied up and looking a lot nicer, it's time to start thinking about all the little critters and wildlife that are going to live in this map, as these are something that the player will be able to use through the hunters. And you place these down using the exact same tools. You can even increase the size and put down massive fields of bunny rabbits or deer if you really wanted. But just be careful when doing that with ducks, or it will assault your eardrums when you come across a pond that's absolutely chocked full of them, all quacking at once. And with homes given to all our little furry friends, it's time to turn our attention back to those mountains we put near the beginning. And it's time to start putting down some ore for our players to be able to mine, as these mountains are going to be the only place where they can get their coal, gold and iron. I'm going to put down quite a lot of it. It's recommended to have almost double the amount of coal to iron and gold, as coal is extremely important to your economy. Due to the design of the map, I really don't want the players to be using catapults, so I'm not going to put down any real granite apart from what we've already placed down in rocks, so they're going to have to really think about attacking each other. And we just need to do a few touch-ups to make sure there's enough iron for all the players. And with that just about done, it's time to check the map to see if it's playable, which is done via a handy in-editor test mode, and it is telling us that our player 1 is invalid and our resources should be just about okay. So let's go see what's wrong with player 1. Due to the hills that we've placed, a castle can no longer go where we placed that flag, so we're going to have to move it to a better position. And as we can see here, we can move it just up a bit and that should be okay. So time to retest the level, and yep, it's all looking good now. Now we have just a little bit of bookkeeping to do, such as giving the map a name, and what else was it going to be, and giving it an author. And then let's save it out so we can go give it a test, shall we? And playing your own maps are quite simple. Go to the unlimited play and then look for your map under the map selection screen. It'll probably be near the bottom after all the Blue Bite ones. We hit OK. We make sure our setup is correct, and before you know it, we'll be in the game. And as you can see, we started at the top left hand G. And that's it. We're in a map that we created in just 15-20 minutes. That's how easy it is to use their editor. And it's just so much fun. It really is one of the more enjoyable editors that you'll use. It's so relaxing and so calming. It's amazing. And back in the day, I discovered this cool little trick, that if you take any of the levels they made, including the original missions, and rename the extension, you can actually edit them in the editor as well. which lends real credence that this was the editor they used to make the game with. So let's take the very first level and edit it to make it significantly easier. Yes, you could use this to cheat quite badly if you really wanted to. So what we'll do is that we'll make a straight path between the objective and where we start. So let's get the big brush and then just lay down some grassland. There we go. Doesn't matter if it's pretty or not. All we care is that it's nice and easy for us to get to. And let's also allow us to get to that little island. We also want to get rid of some of these trees to make it quicker to get along there. There we go. And a few of these. Make sure you don't delete the gate because you cannot put that back in with this version of the editor. If we throw in some extra trees around the beginning, it then becomes very obvious when we start it that we're using our edited map. So let's save it and then look at trying to bring it back into the right folder. So we should keep a backup of our original map and then copy our edited one back into this folder and then change the extension. And we can leave our edited map in the world folder, as we can then play it as a custom map if we want to later. So let's test it out by selecting a new campaign and picking that map as our starting chapter. And straight away we can see that all those extra trees we added are definitely there. Let's fire off a couple of scouts who will hopefully show off some of the area that we just created. And there we have it, the Settlers 2 level editor. It might not have shown up in the original box and we had to wait for the expansion disc, but boy, it was worth the wait, because this is an absolutely amazing editor and I loved using it back then and I still love using it now. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish. That was a creative way to cheat at a map, and this was Goldfish on Games. Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed my little video. I had lots of fun making it, so if you enjoyed it yourself, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and try checking out some of the other videos as I've looked at other level editors in the past.